El día de hoy tenemos una invitada muy especial. Me da un placer que haya aceptado nuestra invitación a platicar con ustedes el día de hoy, Allison Wolfe. Allison Wolfe es una de las fundadoras del movimiento punk feminista estadounidense de tercera ola, Riot Grrrl. That's how you pronounce it?
Sí.
I'm going to repeat. Allison Wolfe es una de las fundadoras del movimiento punk feminista estadounidense de tercera ola, Riot Grrrl. Además de haber cofundado la banda Bradmobile, el fanzine Girl Germs.
Sí.
Okay. Y el Festival Mundial de Música y Arte Feminista Lady Fest. También cantó en las bandas Cold Cold Hearts, Deep Lost, Party Line, Cool Moms, Sex Stains, Exit Stains, Scorpio, Clicky Bitches y Magic with Cookbook. Cool names. En Conferencia en Los Ángeles, tiene una maestría en periodismo de arte en la Escuela de Comunicación y Periodismo de Annenberg, de la Universidad del Sur de California, y produce el podcast I Am the Band, y está trabajando en una historia oral y un archivo de audio del movimiento Riot Grrrl. La conferencia será en inglés, en traducción simultánea, pero ustedes y las personas que nos están viendo a través de YouTube van a hacer sus preguntas también en español. Nosotros las traducimos. Así que no hay ningún problema. Estaremos monitoreando también sus comentarios en YouTube. Así que, por favor, please take the absent microphone.
Hola, soy Allison Wolfe. Soy de LA, Los Angeles. I'm very happy to be here. I get about that far in Spanish. Lo siento. But thank you so much for having me here. It's quite an honor to be at such a historic university. And so I have given talks at universities before and stuff. I definitely would like to talk a little bit about Riot Grrrl and my life and maybe sort of what led me to kind of do some of the things I did. But also I really welcome anyone to interrupt me or whatever and ask questions and make sure that I talk about things that interest you. So please don't hesitate to raise your hand or ask a question or something.
Yes, please.
Okay. So I guess I should start with maybe a little bit of, I don't know if it's really a definition of Riot Grrrl, but what it meant to me. I really see Riot Grrrl kind of belonging to a certain place in time. I guess kind of a 1990s starting in Olympia, Washington, where I grew up, and also Washington, DC, where I lived for quite a while. And kind of surrounding some of these feminist punk bands like Bikini Kill, the band I was in, Bratmobile, another band, Heavens to Betsy, that Corin Tucker from Sleater-Kinney was in, a little later, Sleater-Kinney. But also, I just want to remind people that it wasn't just about the bands. There was this broader community, and a lot of women who maybe weren't in bands or it was really important to them to just form community, even just girls who go to shows and women who maybe do fanzines or just wanted to connect with other women in the punk scene. And not just women, of course. But I think a lot of us punk girls kind of wanted to create, I guess, a bit of a safe space for us to talk about issues that were important to us, like maybe histories of abuse or domestic violence, which, a lot of us had experienced or seen in our families, violence against women in different ways. And actually, even punk rock shows and things, I felt like were more violent back then. We used to kind of get roughed up at every show, really, and a little bit injured or something. And I remember even in high school, I would go to shows, but I always stood in the back. I always stood on the sides because I was too afraid. Maybe I was too shy, but shy, believe it or not. But I was when I was younger. But it was, you're afraid to fully participate for a lot of reasons. But one was I just didn't want to get, stomped on. Yeah, I didn't want to get hurt. So anyways, and I had a hard time even just not just about I couldn't see myself on stage ever, but I also couldn't even see myself in the pit. So anyways, so I think about Riot Grrrl really as kind of a cultural activist community that formed during the kind of grunge years in the Pacific Northwest. And it was kind of like updating feminism. It wasn't a reaction to second wave feminism, but I would say it was more of a strain, if you will, of third wave feminism, which we didn't call it then, but it became known to be that. And we didn't even call it Riot Grrrl at first. I feel like what we were doing went on for quite a while before we coined this term Riot Grrrl. But I think part of that was updating feminism to be more sex positive and sex worker positive as well. And also to kind of bring this idea of girly culture and maybe teen girl bedroom culture that was often not taken seriously into feminism, and to acknowledge the lives of young girls as well. Because before it was always like women, women, women. And even in our women's studies class at university, we would be like, raise your hand. Oh, I remember one time this girl, giving an example. And sometimes the other classmates would be women correcting us with our terminology. And we thought, I just want to be able to be plain spoken in the vernacular that we speak in with our friends and punk rock shows. So, and be taken seriously. And so the idea that anyone whatever you're wearing, maybe you have a lot of makeup on, whatever, or, maybe you're a stripper, whatever, you can still be a feminist, right? And I'm not saying necessarily that second wave feminists didn't believe that, but I felt like there was more pressure for second wave feminists to be one of the boys or do to be taken seriously, you kind of had to be one of the guys and do better than the guys. So my mother was a fierce second wave feminist, so I saw a lot of it growing up. But so the idea, I guess, was to make our academic feminist lives more punk, more DIY, do it yourself, but also to make our punk rock worlds more feminist, for sure, because there was a lot of sexism going on within our punk rock scene. And also this idea, we took the kind of idea of do-it-yourself DIY to, I guess, kind of use whatever resources or tools you had, which might be really rudimentary, and use that to represent yourself or represent ourselves. And so taking over the means of production to express ourselves and represent ourselves. So it was maybe kind of an anti-professionalism idea. So, because I don't know, a lot of the grunge bands and stuff like that were all these guys who could play their instruments really well. And we liked it. We went to the shows and stuff, but I think ultimately I felt like, okay, I don't really know how to play, but I feel like I have something to say. And I feel like it wouldn't be that hard to be more interesting than what they're saying. So how can we express ourselves? I don't think I would have been able to start a band or fanzine or anything without the support of a very DIY community, which was in Olympia, Washington. And that was really thanks to being in a small town that was also very liberal. We had a university, Evergreen State College, it says college, but it's university. And it started in the 60s, very liberal. And a lot of women-run businesses in that town, and a lot of just examples of people kind of just making music out of whatever, like, hitting things in the kitchen and talking about baking a pie, whatever. Yeah. Non-traditional bands and expressions. So that really helped ultimately make me think I could do it too. Even though when I was in high school, I was too shy. So I started late. So I didn't start playing in a band until like 19 or something, which I think nowadays is kind of late. Happily, a lot of women and a lot of people are starting much younger. I don't know. I think maybe I should just go back to start with a little bit of how I grew up and stuff, and then maybe kind of what led me to slowly, it was very slowly, get into a place where I might want to start these activities and form this community of Riot Grrrl. So I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, in the South, in, I won't say when, but you could look it up later. I'm 29 again. And anyways, but my mother grew up pretty poor from a Catholic Croatian family out of near Omaha, Nebraska. She was always a big rebel, and no one could contain her. And so she ran off and went to school in Memphis because she had a friend there who said it was cheaper. My father grew up in Tennessee, in the mountains in East Tennessee. So he was definitely like from there. And they met in he was in medical school in Memphis and she was in nursing school in Memphis. So that's how they met. My father was a medic in the Vietnam War. Very difficult, and I think had a lasting effect, or has had a lasting effect on his life. And then he came back, and at some point they got married. But while he was away in the war, my mother was at school in Memphis, and Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis while she was there. And clearly that had a huge effect on the whole country. But I think for her being that kind of feeling that close to it was, it was really difficult for everyone. And I think she just thought, and I'm not saying this is the answer, but she felt like, I got to get out of here. I don't want to raise my kids in the South. I don't want to, all this stuff. But also, I think as a Catholic, even then Catholics were looked down upon in the South, very much so. And she had a lot of problems there. She wasn't practicing religion, but I think everyone knew, what kind of family she came from. Although I wasn't born yet. So just so you know, I was not born yet. But eventually my parents got married and had me and my twin sister. I have an identical twin sister, and we were born. And then that's when I think my mom was like, after a few years, I was like, no, I'm not staying here. So my parents packed it up and they went as far as you could go to the border of Canada, almost, in Washington State. So and they found hospitals they could work at. My mom started kind of a women's birthing center there in the hospital. She was very dedicated to OB/GYN, healthcare for women. And my father was a doctor there. And then I have a younger sister who was born later there. And I don't know, it was great in a way, but then also, I think, my parents fought a lot and there were a lot of troubles, and my parents ended up divorcing. My father moved back to Tennessee, and my mother then came out as a lesbian, which I think all her friends were like, clearly she had been the whole time, but back then there just weren't, I think she didn't have the vocabulary for it or the way how you express this. But I think by the 70s and stuff, and she found her people, really. So our whole lives changed. She took us, 3 kids, and she kind of came out as not just a lesbian, but a vegetarian, a hippie, free spirit, all this stuff. And she went back to school, and she ended up actually running off with her professor, who left her husband for my mom and moved in with us. And then we all moved to Olympia, and my mother started the first women's health clinic in Olympia, Washington, in the county. And it was actually the second one in the state of Washington. So, and it was definitely like women's healthcare by, for, about women, focused on women. And she had a hard time starting it. As an unmarried woman or divorced woman, she had a very hard time getting a loan to start her business. She had to go to many, many banks and finally found someone who, Yeah, I never could understand why she was always so loyal to this one bank in town. And I realize now it's because they were the only one who would give her a loan. And it was difficult for a while, like we struggled financially, definitely for a while. Also, like we're the weird poor kids with a lesbian mom. And I think one time she, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but she brought home scabies, do you know? Skin lice.
Oh.
From the clinic. I know, gross, right? So then we all had that. Imagine you're in middle school and that's what's happening. So we always felt kind of like outcasts. It wasn't her fault, she was treating a patient, whatever. But she also performed, she was on call for rape kit exams. Anytime, now they are routinely done in hospitals, but at the time, she would do them in her clinic on call. She would testify in court against rapists. I know it doesn't come to court often, but when it did, she would. And then she received death threats for that. They performed abortions at her clinic once a week, constantly harassed by protesters. Eventually, she had to wear a bulletproof vest to work. And she also took a shooting class and learned how to shoot, although clearly she already knew how because she was really good. Really good shot. She made me take the class with her. I was bad. And the cop who taught the class loved her. He just kept handing her at the shooting range. He handed her like 5 different guns. Try this, try this, try that. And she would get it right there every time. But anyway, she ended up buying a Glock. And she carried it in a fanny pack to work every day. But it had these strings where you could go, and it comes down. So I'm laughing, but she brought that to work every day. And I know that she had a partner, a girlfriend at the time, and she was always afraid that my mom wouldn't come home someday, something. And the police in town did not support or protect the clinic at all. And my mom would speak out against that. So one time we were driving with her car, we got pulled over. Okay, we're lucky we weren't treated that badly, but they did give us every ticket they could think of. Found out later, my mom said, "Oh, sorry, I'll pay it. I just spoke out against the police in a public forum recently. They hate me." Okay. So, but she was loved by the underdog basically, but she was hated by the authorities. But she was fearless. So I grew up in a house like that. So it's very feminist, very outspoken and everything, very pro-choice. And, but in a way you take it for granted when you grow up with that. To me, it's like the world was like that, run by women, strong women. And everything. And I think ultimately you have to kind of come to your own cultural and social consciousness on your own and in your own style, your own way, right? So I guess I was in high school and I had a boyfriend who was 2 years older than me. And I thought I had it made, right? He was cool, Letterman jacket, sports gun. And like I said, we had been kind of like gross weirdos in middle school. So I was like, but he was very controlling and I wasn't paying attention to that. I was just happy that someone actually drove me somewhere because my mom would never drive us anywhere. And he also took me out to eat, and paid for it. That also never happened in my house. So I was like, yeah. But I realized quickly that he had a very different family, very old-fashioned, traditional, and controlling. And more and more, I saw all this. One time, he took me out to dinner, brought me back on a Friday night. He had to go home early because he had swimming team in the morning. And my sister was there. "Yay, you're home. Let's go to the party down the street." We went to the party, came back. And on Monday, he found out I went to the party. Or maybe I told him. I'm sure I told him, "Oh, I went to this party." And he was like, "When I take you out and bring you home, you are home for the night." Yeah. I know. And I was like, "What?" So I was very shocked. I'm like, "Why?" So stuff like that started happening. So I broke up with him eventually. So on this day, he came to my house. It was like a Saturday. My mom wasn't home. She was never home, really. And we had no rules. Crazy house. And he was very harsh about it the reaction when I broke up with him. How could you break up with me? I'm so great, whatever. And I'm just like, I didn't know anything. So, and then he laughed, and my sister and best friend were up in my bedroom. So I went in there and they could hear something was going on. One of my friends, she just has this nervous laugh. She always laughs when something's serious. And she kind of started laughing. Well, apparently he heard her laughing. Yeah. And he came back into the house and was like, get out here. So I went out there and he picked me up and pushed me up against the wall and was like, don't you yell at me, don't make fun of me and everything. And I was like, I didn't, I swear, and but at that, and then he dropped me and then ran out of the house. He took a frying pan off the stove, threw it across the kitchen, put a hole in the wall, and the handle broke off into the wall. And I swear we still use that pot for years afterwards. It was like, what? And the hole was there for quite a while. But and he left, and I was just frozen. I froze, and I thought, oh my God, whoa, what was that? But in my mind, well, first of all, I want to say he's lucky my mother was not here. Because yes, he might not be alive. Anyways, and so he laughed and I was frozen and thought, what is that? What is that? What is that? I didn't have the vocabulary to say, oh, that's abuse or domestic violence or something. But in my mind, I'm like, must not do that or hang out with that ever again. So I went counterculture, subculture. So I went from being like mainstream people like that, jocks, whatever, they are bad. Yeah. Jocks and cheerleaders, bad. And then like punks, new wave, everything else, good. So that's kind of what I did. So overnight, I called my new wave friend, my punk friend, hey, I'm hanging out with you now. And then I discovered thrift stores, started dressing weird or whatever. My mom called me the child with the identity crisis. But I think she loved it. But also even just discovering thrift store shopping was very liberating to me at the time because we were kind of broke, we didn't have much money. So all of a sudden I could $1, everything was $1 then. I could have a whole new outfit, for a few dollars or something. So then I felt cool too. Yeah. But I was mostly new wave and then I kind of eventually got into punk rock parties and things like that. But that's how I just wanted to make sure to tell that story because that's how I became counterculture. Like that. So, and then I go to punk rock parties and shows and things. It was cool, but I still never saw myself as being much of a participant. I was an attendant, I would attend these things. And it wasn't until I actually went away for 1 year as an exchange student in Thailand. And then when I came back, I guess I have more confidence and stuff. And that was when I really started hanging out downtown, going to shows. And that's when I started seeing Kathleen Hanna, who's the singer in Bikini Kill and La Tigra. I started seeing her hanging around my town. And she had a shaved head and it was really tough. And I'd see her on the bus and stuff. And I always felt like she'd be like, with attitude. And I thought, who's that? She's scary. And it turns out she ran a club downtown. It was an art space that she kind of turned into a venue for people to play at. And bands like Nirvana played there. So I was also fortunate to be in the Northwest at that time because our local bands were Nirvana, the Melvins, Beat Happening, a lot of stuff like that. Anyway, so that summer, I think I walked by the club and I heard some noise coming out, but there was no one in the parking lot. So I thought, oh, there's a show tonight. And it was Kathleen's band practicing. Her band at the time was called Viva Knievel. And it was a band that she had with a couple guys and one other girl. And she was just screaming at the top of her lungs, like with beet red face, veins, like just not pretty, just terrifying. It was awesome. She's like, boy poison, and all these lyrics like that. And give me a spanking was another lyric. And I thought, whoa, what is this? But it made an impression on me. And there also was a local band, all girls, called Calamity Jane. And I saw them play, and they were kind of fierce. And I thought, oh, that made an impression on me. But it wasn't until I went away to college at the University of Oregon in Eugene, Oregon, that fall, that I had to leave town. I had to get away to think maybe I could come back and do something. So, and it was at university that I met Molly Newman, who became the Bratmanville drummer. So anyways, and she was fierce too. I first met her on the payphone in the hallway. She's like screaming at her boyfriend breaking up. And I was like, who's that? We were neighbors in the dorm, so we could knock on the wall. We had special knocks, like meet me in the bathroom. And the bathrooms were huge and our rooms were tiny. So we'd go hang out in the bathroom. And we started just I shared all my kind of DIY experiences from Olympia with her. And she come from Washington, D.C. and was very politicized, had volunteered at a lot of organizations. And she kind of brought that element. We brought that together. Also, at the same time, we were visiting Olympia a lot and got to know the girls in Bikini Kill. They were starting. And it was just a really supportive group. And they really encouraged us to start a band, start a fanzine, all this kind of stuff. And it really became a girl community. And so we did start a band called Bratmobile. We were a band in theory for quite a while before we actually started playing. Yeah, that is my usual way. I'll talk about something for at least a year before I do it. So if I ever say anything to you, remind me and tell me to finally do it. So yeah, so we started doing that. I think it was really like Calvin Johnson from K Records called us one day and said, hey, I want you to play this show in Olympia, opening for Bikini Kill. Sunbelt at Sidewalk was another band. And on Valentine's Day, 1991. And we were like, what? But we're not a band. We can't do that. It's like, you come here about once a month bragging about your band, saying you have a band. And we're like, oh my God. And he forced us to play the show. So we thought, oh my God, now we got to write songs. So we went to a local band guy and asked him if we could, this guy, Robert Christie from a band, Oswald Pigo, and he loaned us his practice space, their equipment. And then I said, okay, great, but how do I write songs? And he said, listen to the Ramones. So, okay. And I thought, no. In my mind, I'm like, I never will listen to the Ramones because I want us to sound different. Yeah. Not that we had any skills whatsoever to sound like the Ramones. So, and I still don't own a Ramones record. But so we kind of did it that way. Molly bought a car actually out of the paper for like $400 or something. We drove up there. It didn't have lights, I don't know, tires, whatever. And we got to our show, and Corin Tucker, who later from Sleater-Kinney, she was there. She was going to school up in my hometown, and she had a camera, Super 8 camera, asked if she could film us for a project. And we just found this really open community supporting us. Thought, whoa. We got on stage, and I can't even tell you that feeling, like all of a sudden I was like, are these songs? Is this music? Does this count? And it was probably barely songs, barely music or whatever, but everyone was cheering and supporting us. I remember getting off stage right when we finished, and then I remember Kurt Cobain walked in right then and missed us. So I ran to him. I was like, you missed our show. Here's my fancy. He's like, sorry. So, but yeah, and people asked us to record that weekend. We could barely hold the songs together. Slim Moon, who later started Kill Rock Stars record label, he asked us if he could have a song for a compilation for a record label he was starting. So things just kind of really started for us. And it was just having a supportive community who wanted to hear whatever we had to say, but even if it wasn't professional, it sounded weird maybe. It's funny though, every time I start a new band though, the first time I'm on stage for that band, I feel the same way. I still am like, oh my God, are these songs? Is this music? Will anyone like this? Seriously. But I think, yeah, it was just important for us that kind of self-expression and to bond with other women in the scene and not be competitive, not fight each other. And that was a big deal. Most of these kind of ideas and the Riot Grrrl manifesto and all that really came from Kathleen Hanna. I really can't stress how much she really was organized, ambitious, always had goals and was always creative in making things and always talking about things, reading, everything, just very, very smart. And I feel like in a lot of ways, she really guided the community. Yeah, and really created it. And we were just all part of it. So I don't know. I'm kind of sorry I'm rambling, but.
No, it's great.
Yeah, please stop me.
I want to ask you a question because one of the reasons also why I wanted to invite you is because I want to talk precisely about this, about community building. Mm-hmm. Because unfortunately in philosophy, we have still, especially in social, epistemological vision, we have still this view where community is built by agreement, right? By people agreeing on things. Mm-hmm. But the story you're telling us seems to be that there is something more basic, right? Which is this support, right? So it's more about doing things together. So my question is about what do you think makes someone want to support another cultural enterprise, another person, so that you want them to be part of your community? Oh, how did you experience that?
Exactly. You're like, I don't know.
No, yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think a sense of belonging, and especially like, when you're younger and a lot of it, I mean, I do want to stress that a lot of our activities came from just friendship and hanging out and kind of cultivating each other's raw talent into something, And I think that a lot of that is the punk rock ethos or something. It's like the band, the people in the audience at one point will be the band on stage, in half an hour or something like that. And so you're mixing and kind of blurring the lines between audience and performer. And I think that was really important to not have a division or not much of a division between, and to value everyone in the community, like the photographers, the audience, everyone's participating, and to make it active participation was important for us. Maybe because we felt left out for so long. Oh. So maybe it is a sense of sometimes for anyone who's marginalized in any way, feeling left out and feeling like, well, you've got a whole system against you. So I guess it is strength in numbers, right? Like you need a community to feel like you could do something.
But do you think it is because you had also a common goal? There was something even bigger, or it was more horizontal?
Well, yeah, maybe. Well, I think we thought so at the time. Looking back on Riot Grrrl, I feel like that was maybe one of the flaws, is that we didn't have well-defined goals, and we certainly didn't all agree on things or how to do things. But yeah, we didn't have a certain thing we were working towards, except for just general feminist expression, probably, and DIY expression and stuff like that. And I don't know, uplifting each other.
But why do you think it was a weakness? It sounds also like a strength, right? You don't need to agree to be part of the community.
That's true. But I think at some point it just dissolved and fell apart. And there was just like nothing to hold, the center cannot hold, or whatever she said. John Gideon. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. But sometimes I do think that maybe it could have been better. But also, I mean, we spoke to a very specific community. It was like, even though we read broadly and would talk about various issues of intersectionality and things like that, you're still like, your actions often are based on just your own reality. And it was often just limited to the reality of us and our friends in that town or in that space. So there's shortcomings there as well. And we didn't really know about coalition building or anything like that, or we didn't know how to do it. Also, we're young, and you're learning on the fly. Like we're writing fanzines, writing our ideas out as we go, and it's urgent, you get it out. And it's also kind of disposable medium, really. We felt like fanzines were disposable.
On purpose?
Kind of, because everything keeps moving. You know, we didn't have internet, we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have any of that. So it does need to move faster. So that's why also, I think it's crazy when people still have the fanzines and I'm like, no, that was meant to just come and go. So I don't know. Yeah, we were learning as we were going. So many mistakes, many stupid things done or said probably, but you know, flying by the seat of our pants, really. Yeah, but I don't know. I think it was important though for us to try at least have the pretense of supporting each other and creating a feminist community. And even if we did argue and fight, ultimately we had each other's backs, I think.
So why do you think it even if after it faded away, whether there's still a legacy, right? People are still talking about it, people are still writing about it. So it didn't actually disappear, right?
Mm. Yeah, well, you know, for a while people were not. I do want people to know that during, like, especially during the late 90s maybe, and maybe early 2000s, people weren't, we definitely, once all our bands broke up, we were fighting, whatever, it kind of ate itself, right, girl? And I think we ended up just kind of being like, embarrassed about it. But it wasn't until maybe the early 2000s that we started being talked about in a historical way. And it made us, and we would finally all had this little gathering where we were interviewed for the Seattle Experience Music Project. I think it's called the Pop Museum now in Seattle. And they kind of made us feel like, and I helped them set this thing up, but we kind of got a lot of the Riot girls back in the same room talking and being interviewed. And I think we realized we missed some of that community spirit, and we missed, because we were all still doing things, still in bands, whatever, but separately and in our own spheres. And yeah, and it did feel a little bit sad. I think that's still what's happening. I don't feel like there's a big community still, but I think at least we could look at some of the stuff we did and acknowledge it and feel a little bit proud sometimes, you know, because we definitely didn't at first. We were just like, lots of backlash, and we backlashed ourselves really too. So, but I think if people can take out of it something like sticking up for yourself, or, you know, talking back to someone and not feeling like you have to be professional in any way to have a voice, to start a magazine or fanzine or a band or a podcast or a radio show or something. And really, in a way, we kind of tried to blend the personal and political, right? So it's like, let's start with our own community and challenging what's going on in our own lives and our own communities first. And then hopefully inspiring other people to do that as well. So
there is a question from the people on YouTube, from Karina Cabrera. I read it. Thinking about your podcast and listening to your story, being raised in the second wave and active in the third, how much has the narrative of the songs changed? Especially comparing it with the fourth wave scene.
Oh, fourth wave. Like the songs?
The songs.
I don't know. Like, I mean, does she mean like songs in general of girl bands, or
I assume,
or my songs? I don't know. I don't know if my songs have changed.
You can detail the question, Karina. Probably.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel I don't really want to be I'm definitely not an expert on what's going on now, so I don't want to speak for the modern era of punk feminism or whatever, because a lot of times I'm just like, I don't know. I try to know. I still go to shows and sometimes play shows and stuff, and I never really stopped being in bands, well, until the pandemic really, but I need to get in a new band now. But I enjoy seeing, of course, girl bands and things still, but one thing that is kind of interesting to me can be when you meet people who are like we're just a band, it's not a girl band or whatever, and even though I still identify very much with it's very gendered, right? Girl was very gendered. And I think things are much more gender fluid now, which I really appreciate, which I think is great. I have a hard time getting out of that language just because that's what I concentrated on. But I don't know, maybe that is our legacy, that women and people who identify as women and actually in multi-gendered, situations, like people feel that they can just do something and not actually have to explain themselves in any way. Maybe it's cool that no one has to say we're a girl band or we're a transgender band or whatever, and maybe that's the legacy, right? That you don't have to think about it as that much anymore. Because now you have like girl rock camps all over the place, inspiring young people, like young girls, like to express themselves, like, or really just self-empowerment through a medium of music. Even if they don't go on to be in bands and stuff, they go on to do cool stuff, right? And they feel like they can do it, and they have examples of other people doing it, right? Like we all need to see examples of someone like ourselves to feel like we can do it too.
Karina has detailed that it's about your songs.
My song?
Yes, yeah. You have the narrative of your songs changed.
Well, it's funny. I'll think that they haven't changed, but then if I look, because lately I've been singing some old songs, and I'll be like, "Oh my God, like, what is that?" The way I've written songs tends to have been more about the personal being political. I haven't been good at writing kind of songs that have a real clear statement or whatever, or political statement. But I like to write about interpersonal relationships and interactions and how we are kind of taking what we've been socialized with and perpetuating that within our own relationships and communities. And that's usually what I write about. It's usually from a very first person, second person point of view, like you, I, you, whatever. And people will always ask me like, "Oh, what guy is that song about?" And it's never really one person or anything. It's usually a composite, like, oh, that's just kind of bringing all these situations in. And sometimes just saying like, no, that is, someone actually said that to me, or someone actually did that, But I think hopefully the songs have gotten a little bit more mature. I mean, like in one song, I'm like, I don't want anyone to tell me how, like, whatever, cool I am or something, or what's so cool about what I'm wearing. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, okay. So I don't know if it's changed that much, but I think it's gone hopefully a little bit tougher, a little bit maybe more introspective. But I think people always saw Bratmobile as this band that was maybe less serious than Bikini Kill. We're like the kid sister of Bikini Kill. And but I think a lot of it was really just that we had a different style, that more personal is political, but also a sense of humor. Like I always tried to implicate myself and ourselves in the songs and see like, well, I do this dumb thing too, or something like that. So, or I fall for it every time.
Do you have any questions? Great. Okay, no.
But I'm still thinking how to make it because it's not.
Okay.
What do you think that not principles, but principles of Riot Grrrl later got a little bit co-opted by what the Spice Girls did with girl power, but it got a lot more diffusion in the world.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, I always forget about the whole media thing. The media was a big problem for Riot Grrrl. A lot of it was because we felt like we didn't need the media. We were like, we are representing ourselves. We have our bands, our lyrics. We have our records we're putting out. We have our fanzines. That is our media, right? Obviously, that's on a small local scale in a way. I mean, we were good at networking, though, and getting it out there. But we didn't see a need for the media. I mean, later, of course, I look back and I'm like, well, okay, how do you think we were able to get shows? Because people wrote about our bands coming to town or something like this. But also, you have to remember that only the people who were in bands or maybe who owned a record label or something could benefit from that media. Whereas all the people who kind of had Riot Grrrl as more of a like support group and things like that, I think they felt really ripped off by this media exploitation because they weren't getting written about or whatever. And it was kind of ruining something that was important to them and precious to them. And I think often the result of media coverage can be what I call defanging and declawing the message, right? Watering it down a bit. We were often made out to be like, I don't know, like fashion plates or, like look at this cute fad or something. And we felt often misrepresented. But then again, not everyone in Riot Grrrl agreed with that. So at some point, Kathleen Hanna imposed like a media blackout with Bikini Kill At Least, because they were definitely targeted the most, harassed the most.
Yeah, the infamous spin issue that basically made a whole mess of what Bikini Kill and Riot Grrrl.
Right. Right. And people were like saying things about Kathleen, very personal too, that were like kind of outing her in different ways to the whole world or to the whole country. She's like, I didn't tell some. So, but the thing is, even when they stopped speaking to the media, people still kept writing that garbage. So, but my bandmates did not agree with media blackout. And because they were more media savvy anyways. It was probably best that I keep my mouth shut because I wasn't. But I think also there ended up being resentment of the lead singers of the bands because we were the ones who were interviewed and quoted and focused on. So then we would be saying things to represent our bands, but our bandmates didn't agree. So there was also that issue. So the media onslaught also created more division within our own bands. So there was all that. And then eventually the whole thing just gets co-opted, right, by the Spice Girls. They start using girl power, which was totally something that was Riot Grrrl. Yeah, like Kathleen, I'm sure, made up that term. I mean, it's not hard to come up with, I suppose, but still. And that sucked, or you go into like stores like Urban Outfitters and they're playing all these fake Riot Grrrl sounding bands and having the clothes even, like the tight, cute little whatever t-shirts that whatever on it, we were like, oh, the breaths. And we felt like almost like we were being mocked. But so I kind of hated the Spice Girls for a while. But eventually I do remember going on a walk with my mom and one of her friends, and the woman was complaining because she had to take her daughter to the Spice Girls concert that night. And I thought about it. I was like, when I was that age, I was crying about Duran Duran. And I never could see myself on stage with Duran Duran. I just wanted to go out with John Taylor. So, and I thought, well, at least if this young girl sees the Spice Girls, maybe she can imagine herself on stage with them. And maybe she can imagine herself, you got to get with my friends and all that. So it seemed like better. At least it's mainstream, it's watered down, but at least it's better than what I was probably like pining over in middle school. So
there's another question from a couple of questions from the YouTube channel. This one is from Miss Andrews, and she's just asking for recommendations of bands that you listen to right now that you would like to recommend.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Well, I listen to a lot of old stuff, but let's talk about newer bands. Well, there's Elise Paprika, who's here in the audience, and we've been touring with. Don't mean to embarrass you, but at least you're wearing a red shirt. You can turn that color. But I really think is one of the most amazing performers and singers I've ever seen. And also, we've been playing with Las Decapitadas, this young high school girl band. They're so fun, and they sing about hating high school, I was told. And they're great. Also, well, I guess I should think, there's like Shannon and the Clams. I love Shannon Shaw. Bleached, I like that band. There is a band called Shopping in England who I love. There's Downtown Boys. who have been kind of going on hiatus, but they're awesome, super politicized band of like at least half girls, half boys. I think the singer's a lawyer now. It's pretty awesome. Yeah, amazing. It's funny. I make a list so that when I'm asked this question, I'm ready, but I'm never really ready. I'm sure there's a whole lot I'm forgetting. But after the time with the pandemic and everything, you kind of forget what's even going on. Who knows who's still banned anymore?
Okay, now we have a question from Valeria Marin. What would be your advice for a Riot Grrrl project starting? You talk a little bit about being shy. How did you overcome that to get on stage?
How did I overcome being shy? Well, I think it's hard. I think for a lot of girls, we're raised to, once you hit puberty, especially, you start doubting yourself and doubting everything, or at least I did. And, this is weird, I'm ugly, whatever, And it somehow, eventually, you have to push past that. But I think it's having a girl gang that helps, And I think, I don't know. I mean, I guess my thing with, if you wanted to start some kind of Riot Grrrl project now, first thing, don't call it Riot Grrrl. I think it's really important for young feminists to come up with their own terminology, their own words and images and things that speak to their own communities, their own situations, and updated, really, right? Because that's really, I don't even believe in waves of feminism, really, because as long as sexism exists, so must feminism. But we have to just keep it fluid. It's a living thing, right? So you keep updating it with whatever speaks to you and your community, really, and how you can bond that way. So I guess that would be it's kind of random advice, but trying not to be, I guess trying to just let it all hang out. I really appreciate seeing bands that just go, like, this is me. I know you don't have to look cute and pretty, but if you want to look cute and pretty, fine. It's all fine. But when you have that kind of barrier, or that you can feel it and see it, you can see it in other people. So when a band is really trying hard to be a certain way, you can just see it and you're like, come on, just let loose. Well, like Elise Pepperda has a song called where you're like, I'm ugly, I don't care, I'm ugly, I'm pretty, whatever, who cares? And I think that attitude is really important, especially for women, because there's so much societal pressure on us to be cute and presentable. And even still, even when you're being like, you're still supposed to be sexy when you're going,
Yeah.
So,
the next question, I'm sorry, some questions here. Yeah, sorry, please. Por favor.
How would you describe the zeitgeist in the beginning of the 90s and the relationship with making this community in Olympia? I agree with you when you said that we need to make our own concepts that responds to our time, our present time. But how would you describe that zeitgeist of that moment that allow you to make a community and make a movement that still inspires a lot of girls and women nowadays?
Well, sometimes I wonder if not necessarily having everything on blast on social media and stuff was, I'm so glad social media did not exist when we were there, because we would have all just torn each other apart, or others would have torn us apart in about 2 seconds. So I think part of it was so much self-discovery, like even just to find out about like past women's bands, like the Slits, the Raincoats, X-Ray Specs, Alice Fag, the Bags, all this kind of, the Avengers, stuff like that. You have to go to someone's house, listen to and they play records for you, or they make you a mixtape and give you that. That's how I found out about most of the bands that came before me, was tapes that people made me and said, hey, listen to this, you'd like this. And so I think there's sort of that almost tactile, physical sharing of things that was really different and really important. Yet somehow we managed to network across the country. But I think there also was a lot less information, but a lot fewer people doing bands and doing these things. Now it's so much more, you know. And I'm not going to say I hate the internet, because I can book tours that way now, much cheaper than long distance phone calls, you know. Because I used to, long distance phone calls and like sending postcards out to confirm the shows. Yeah, crazy. And you show up and you're looking at maps and going, where? You call ahead every day to the promoter to get directions. How do I get there? No, no map, whatever, Google Maps, whatever. So I think there is something about that time that I don't know exactly. I don't want to say, it was better or something. But maybe for now, people who were so used to these conveniences, maybe they look and they're like, oh my God, how did they do it? And it seems like wild, right? It's like, but we did it, So kind of doing things in the face of whatever, with whatever tools are available to you is, I guess, maybe that was inspiring or something.
Well, my question was related with two subjects.
Yeah,
first,
please.
Because now in USA, there is a controversy with abortion. So you have said that you are pro-choice and your background and your childhood and all that you have told us. But how do you can do this kind of analysis of that zeitgeist, political zeitgeist? I understand this thing about technologies, but this political zeitgeist, that difference between 90s and now what's happening. I saw Kamala Harris saying that the problem was that people was not choosing pro-choice governance or pro-choice senators. And I'm not sure if this kind of strategies is the point.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
But also that I have another question, but maybe it's enough for now with this one.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like it's hard for me, and I've had some arguments, not arguments really, but maybe slight disagreements with people recently where they're like, people just don't get out and vote. People just don't care. And I'm like, no. We have had 3 presidents or 3 presidencies where they did not win the popular vote. What is that? Like that, you could vote all you want, maybe, but what happened, right? So we have a right wing and a Republican Party that is cheating their way through everything, and a system that's broken that is allowing for that. And so we have this consolidation, ever increasing consolidation of right-wing power and corporate power that is just totally taken over our country. And it feels almost impossible to fight against, but what else can you do? You have to fight because it's anti-human, really. And so, when you've got like Bush twice and then Trump, and it's like and Reagan even started it all, and like Reagan even got in on lies, and so, but when you've got presidents and administrations, let's not be, it's not just one person, it's a whole administration, right? And everyone they hire, who do they hire or who do they appoint? Judges. And judges, these, Supreme Court justices, lifetime appointments. So we're stuck with all this crap from Bush, Reagan, Bush again, another Bush, whatever, Trump, oh my God. And we're stuck with all that. These people are still on the bench making decisions for people who don't agree with them. I would say most of our country does not agree with the politics of our country. And no one's listening to the people. I mean, Bush W., he straight up said, I don't care what the people think. When people were protesting against the war, Iraq, and invasion of Afghanistan as well, he literally said, I don't care what the people think. I'm doing what I think is right. It was like, well, okay, but you're supposed to be an elected representative. Okay, he knows he wasn't fucking elected. He was selected. So, I mean, okay, close enough. It's scary that Trump and Bush even are close, but they didn't win the popular vote. Why do we have a system where the popular vote person doesn't win? And you look at half the people in our country that live there aren't even allowed to vote. If you're not a citizen, maybe if you're a felon, if you're under 18, yet they have to live with the consequences. And then they say that half the people who are registered to vote and allowed to vote don't vote. Okay, there's something there, but they make it impossible to vote. It's not a holiday, it's not a weekend. Some people have to have 3 jobs to feed their families. How do you get to the polls? Oh, there might be one polling station in your whole neighborhood. If it's a poor neighborhood, oh, they don't want poor people to vote. They don't want people of color to vote. They don't really want most women to vote. You know, they certainly don't want young people to vote. So it's like that. So that's kind of how I feel like where we are. Sorry, I'm so mad. But this whole like anti-abortion shit, oh my God, my mom would be rolling over in her grave. It's just it's not unbelievable, because before my mother died, she died in 2000. She was like, don't forget, they will chip away at this right every chance they get. We're like, oh, Mom, look, you know, it's true. And it's like, I can't believe this kind of control. But I feel like it's all these people's almost last hurrah. Like they just want to crush this country one last time before they die or something. But then you've got young people doing it too, like who all these little young Republicans and QAnoners and Trumpers. And I don't know. I don't know what to do, and I don't know what the updated ways are, but at least journalism is a lot more fairly representative now, because, you know, anyone can write stuff online and all that. It's more democratized, I suppose. Sorry, I'm like.
Okay. I'm going to read a question online, and
Yeah.
then we'll get back to Abraham. Okay, this is from Aranza Castillo. Bradmobile and Bikini Kill are still definitely a huge inspiration for so many punk rock feminist bands, not just in Mexico, but around the world. What are your thoughts about this new Riot Grrrl era?
Oh, well, it always surprises me because it seems like a long time ago. But yeah, I mean, I'm obviously very grateful for that. And as we know, Bikini Kill is back together and going on tour, and they sound to me better than ever if you get to see them play. And they're still politicized. Some of them have even become more politicized than they used to be. It's great. Bratmobile isn't exactly back together. I would like to be, we'll see, you know, but we'll see. But also for me, I never really stopped being a feminist, but until recently. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's cool. I think because of this consolidation of power and stuff, and people maybe feeling like, God, what is, you know, a lot has changed, but then in this other way, a lot has not changed, right? So people might look back and feel inspired by this stuff. But also we have to acknowledge that if we're not dead yet, we're still creating and producing. And actually Alice Bag from the Bags is someone who has inspired me to realize that there's also a place for older women too. We can keep creating until we die, right? And keep that cultural activism going until we die, because shit is fucked up. And I hope I can say that. Anyways, but also that's another thing, is we're often put out to pasture, right? Women, once you hit, I don't know, 40, you're put out to pasture. Bye. And even now, when some people are doing these kind of Riot Grrrl-y events or podcasts or whatever, they still don't involve us, the original members. I'm like, we're still here. We're still alive. We're still thinkers and creators and whatever. And that's another thing, is I think people forget that. And they just try to put it in this historical place. And it's like,
I'm going to use a pinky here. I'm going to give myself my own pinky. I don't know if you know the terminology. But because I wanted to ask you about this, because there is so much focus on that period of your career. Mm-hmm. And so of the rest of your career, both musically and then the rest of activities, what do you think you would like people to like turn around and say, like, no, I also did these other things that are also very valuable and I'm also very proud of, that you think, or am I assuming too much?
That I'm proud of something? Probably. Well, I don't know. I guess sometimes I wish people would look at the later bands that I've done, because I don't know how to say this and not offend anyone, but like some of it I like better. Like I have been in some bands with like two singers and I prefer that, or something. Or it's like maybe hopefully there's some musical progress or something interesting happening. And so I wish that if people wouldn't just be like, yeah, about Brownsville. Because especially sometimes I go back to those songs and I'm like, it's not that they're not good, that sometimes I don't relate to it as much anymore. Also, I don't know, like I guess I've done some teaching. I know it's just kind of like a small, weird job, but I teach English as a foreign language to young adults in Los Angeles. And I really enjoy it. I think it's really, I like the performance aspect of it and the interaction and just being able to see people learn and change and stuff. I've volunteered sometimes for girls' rock camps, and that's always really rewarding. So I think if there's a way to kind of pay it forward or pass it along, that I appreciate that. Trying to think what else I do a podcast, and it's called I'm in the Band. And I really love doing that. Like I'm trying to kind of also show the personal histories and how that led to cultural activism with a lot of mostly women in music from the past, present, and I still think that those histories are underrepresented. It's not that they weren't there. I think, I'll go back to early punk people as well. And sometimes they tell me their communities were quite diverse, but that's not who gets historicized or written into history. So I think it's important to also look at kind of our foremothers or our contemporaries and make sure to honor them and write them into history as well. And I just like hearing them talk, actually. I love their stories.
Thank you.
It inspires me.
Sorry. Abraham, por favor.
Hi, thank you. I was wondering about how the behavior of maybe men and also the expectations of masculinity have changed within the movement. And maybe you could share something about that.
The behavior of?
I mean, not only what are the expectations about men and masculinity, it being more fluid, it changing norms, and also giving a different space to women, and how that has affected over time the expectations and behavior of men, or what you have seen from the inside about what masculinity means within that context from their web feminism.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important. I think a lot of people, like in my kind of around my age, that a lot of the guys were maybe, I don't know, but maybe some of the last generation of men to be brought up with this more kind of, I don't know, firm gender roles, of masculinity, expectations of masculinity and all this stuff, and being a man and not showing your feelings and all that. And sometimes I talk to my peers, like guys my age, about that. But then when I talk to younger guys, it's like, you're right, it's different. I feel like gender has become more fluid, and that gender roles have become more fluid. And even just when I first got here to Mexico City, I saw all these guys with like fingernail polish on. And I was like, that's so cool. Like, and it's just whatever, And, I've had friends who said that, 10 years ago or whatever, that this girl told me she was painting her nephew's fingernails and the dad came in and was freaked out by that. Don't teach him to be gay or something, all this kind of heteronormativity and fear of, homophobia and things like that. And it's like, I feel like that's definitely changing. But also, I think it is important for feminists and everyone to realize that these issues, feminism is also affects men, and sexism really affects men as well, right? It's like it really confines them to be maybe someone who they're not, right? And that pressure, and maybe teaches them not to express their feelings, and maybe have more mental health issues, and also, there's even a stigma for men to get mental health care, all this kind of stuff. So we have to realize that these strict gender roles affect everyone, not just women, it kind of makes everyone's lives worse and maybe more confined. But I don't know, it's hard because I think things have changed. I do, like I said earlier, I think Riot Grrrl was very gendered, but I think we also were existing in a time, and we were raised at a certain time too. So looking back further, where the gender roles were more defined and enforced. So a lot of it was reacting to that. A lot of Riot Grrrl was that. But I think now things have changed enough where the conversation can be different. And I do like how everyone's trying to disentangle the gender from things. I don't necessarily know how to do it well enough, probably, but I think it's cool that that's happening. So sorry, it's kind of vague answer. But.
Again, we have another question from YouTube, and it says from Eduardo Gil, what do you enjoy most about being a musician?
I like the social. I'm very social. So I like being on stage and performing, and I like meeting people and talking to people. I like going on tour. I like being able to visit new and different places, or even the same place, but going somewhere. That's my favorite part. Probably like recording. All the studio kind of stuff is my least favorite. I don't know. Also, I think I don't like, the thing about recording that I'm not so into is that like, I hate being stuck to whatever I did that day. It's just that day. How did you sing that day? What did you decide in the studio, or let someone convince you to do in the studio, or how to mix it that later you're like, I knew it, whatever. So I hate being pinned down to a certain time and place. Exactly. I want it to be more fluid. I like live performance. I like the interaction between audience and performer and the blurring of those lines.
That also sounds similar to your answer to the question about fanzines. You also wanted it, like, also even the expression of ideas just to be circumscribed at that time.
Yeah.
So would you be happy if people didn't listen to your recording, just went to see you live?
Yeah, probably. That'll be fine. Yeah. But they might want to listen to it and see if they like it first, right? And then go. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm happy with a good recording, but I think I've often been not super pleased about the result of recordings in a lot of bands I've been in. But I think I'm slowly getting better at saying what I want. But every time I'll listen and go like, oh my God. Like, why did I let them tell me not to double the vocals?
Yeah.
That's stupid. Or why did I let someone say it's really difficult to double vocals, so don't do it? Or why didn't we turn up the other singer in the mix? And when I asked for that, why did I let the engineers or the rest of the band say no? Something like that.
Another question, please.
Now that you mentioned that, was it difficult or exasperating getting talked down to while you guys were on tour dealing with main engineers or promoters and the venues that were men or stuff like that?
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think even like Sleater Kinney wrote a fanzine about this called Hey Sound Guy. And I think they brought it on tour, and it was just all the stories of experiences they've had with sound guys. A lot of times I think people wouldn't take us that seriously, sound people, and be like, whatever, it can sound like whatever. And I don't have the strongest voice, so I think I always really want the monitors really loud. And they don't really understand how loud I want it. They think I don't need to hear myself. And I'm like, I'll lose my voice if I don't hear myself. And I have a whole tour to do here. So I want it all the way up just before feedback. And they're like, oh, but we don't want feedback. I was like, okay, just before. Or who cares? Let it feed back and I'll pull the mic out in between songs, whatever, So I've had issues with that where they never turn and I notice when I go to shows, they never turn the singer up loud enough, almost never. And especially with girl bands. And maybe they think the guitar is more important. I don't know. I haven't had too much trouble because I am sometimes that person who's like, it's not working. Oh, turn it on. So I don't really mind having someone show me how to do everything sometimes, but we definitely, with the guitarist in Bratmobile, I can't tell you how many times people have come up to her to tell her exactly what her guitar is, where it came from, what year, model, everything. And she's like, I know, I bought it. And that happens a lot. People trying to tell us what our equipment is, and especially her, and they're often wrong. So she'll be like, actually, it's this, blah, 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 blah. So that's that kind of thing, but people not trusting your judgment. Yeah. And a lot of times guys just not caring and I don't know, thinking you're a dipshit or something. I don't know. Maybe I am, but sometimes.
I'm going to give myself the word. Okay. It's okay. I really like a lot how important the presence of your mother is in your narrative, right? Because what I'm hearing is that a lot of how you see where you got as a woman, as a feminist, has a lot to do with how much groundwork she laid and people like her. Right? And do you have a problem then with people who didn't go through that, right? who are like feminists, like more first generation themselves personally, right? Because they didn't grow up with that environment, they're more reactive. Do you see a difference between with people who have come to feminism through a very different kind of background?
Oh, like rather than a kind of hands-on kind of way, like more theoretical? Or...
Actually, that's a better question than the one I had in mind.
But I don't know the answer to it.
No, but I was thinking about people who like were raised in a more conservative, and then this is their first time, so they didn't have this like assumptions that they could build on.
Right. Well, I mean, I definitely don't notice or worry about that too much with other women, because I feel like all women have their own experience and it's all valid, and they all learn in their own way or come to it in their own ways. And I trust them, like I trust that they have hands-on experience.
Yes,
clearly. I have definitely had issues with men who they seem to maybe have learned about it in college or something, but I get it. If you don't have to experience it, you don't learn it in the same way. Whatever. I get it. I have my own shortcomings with that in other ways, right? But I think that kind of stuff usually comes out more in like relationships, like serious relationships or intimate relationships, where you're just like, wow, they really think everyone's equal. And they really think we're just supposed to pretend everyone's equal, and whatever. And I think that sometimes I've had issues with people who are just trying so hard for equality. And you're like, I don't even think that's the story. Like equality is, of course that's great, but it's an ideal and it's not reality. So it's not just about me and you paying exactly the same amount at the restaurant or whatever. In fact, you should probably pay more because you make more. Maybe, I don't know, or you have more potential of earning, whatever. But, so stuff like that, it's like when people are really like bent on equality without looking at the broader picture. Sometimes I see that, and you could tell that people are, I don't know, either haven't experienced like certain like oppression or certain kinds of oppression, I guess, or they haven't even read about it or talked about it much, and I think that happens a lot more in our alternative circles than we think, there's this assumption, in our subcultures or in our punk or whatever, we assume everyone's kind of on the same page and has the same political values, but then it's like, no, we all have really different experiences, and society creeps into the way we're socialized comes from the mainstream, right? We can't always break all of that, break free from all of it. So yeah, I guess sometimes it's weird. I don't know. Like I guess one time I went out with a guy who was very conservative and I didn't realize it, or he came from a very conservative family.
Oh. Yeah,
one time he was talking about he's like, I called my mom and I told her about your tattoo. And I was like, what? He was like, well, because you're going to meet her this summer, so I had to prepare her. And I'm like, what the hell is going on in your household? Like, I was terrified. And then I just yelled at him. I was like, my tattoo says mom. It was for when my mom was sick and died. And I'm not going to fucking explain this to anyone, not to your fucking religious parents or anything. Like, I don't have to, and I just was mad. Anyways, so sometimes there's stuff even like that. And you're like, you're supposed to be a punk. What?
Not exactly.
Yeah, just dumb stuff like that. Or a lot of times I think there's a lot of men that I've encountered in my life who are afraid of strong women. I mean, they're attracted to that at first, but it doesn't take long before they're like, oh, she's not impressed when I tell her this and that. Oh, I can't tell her what to like or what music to like. And, I can't shape her or form her in some way. It's like, nope, no, you can't. And they don't like it. No, they'd much rather have a younger traded in for a new model. Something you could mold a little better. And I think that's alternate advice too. People who would never admit it, but it happens. And you see it play out in relationships. So I see that a lot. I'm the old model.
More questions here? Sí, por favor.
You said that it's not about equality, that equality is not the story.
Mm-hmm.
Which one is the story then?
Well, I don't know. Like, I guess when I'm trying to think of, I used to write songs about this, so maybe I should explain that better. Where I felt like, especially when I moved to Washington, D.C., I came into a scene. I came from a very woman-centered punk community, to a very man-centered punk community. And that was almost like culture shock to me. And really it felt like the guys ran the scene there. And you had these bands, I don't want to name names, but they're very cool. Like, people I love their bands. I think they're politicized, but sometimes I felt like their politics were kind of short-sighted, and they were just like, we're all equal, everyone's equal, let's just treat each other equally and be equal. And I'm like, that's not what the fuck is going on. Like, that's great, I love it too, but that is like science fiction, And so I felt like a lot of issues that were not important to them would get swept under the carpet because they were not going to acknowledge that men and women, for example, were not equal in their scene, and were not given the same respect or something, or the same airtime or something like that. And my experience at first living in DC was that it was a very male aggressive town. I definitely have had people like throw 40 ounces at my head. I had people freak out because men tried to beat me up because I went into the men's bathroom instead of the women's bathroom at some pizza place. Just stuff like that. I've had guys grab my little sister and try to drag her away in front of a cop car, and like asking the cop to do something. What am I supposed to do? Just all sorts of, guys throwing rocks at me while I'm riding my bike, people trying to run me off the road while I'm riding my bike because I'm wearing, I don't know, maybe I look like Pee Wee Herman or something, but I have the streamers and the horn and the skirt and everything. It might be also just being different in any way there was like, and different from even the other punks, like, you dress girly and bright colors and stuff. That wasn't going on really. So I think it was a lot like that. So, I don't know. I just remember writing a song where the lyric was something like, oh, you're always singing about how everyone's equal. And it was, like, well, okay, well, if everyone's so equal, why do you suck so much then? I don't know. So it's like, but it's kind of, childish, I guess, to say, but I didn't like that people pretended that we were all starting from the same place, right? And that's what I mean. Don't pretend we're all starting from the same place, because we're not.
Could it be that that's how guys can handle it? Maybe it's a strategy that's all that we can afford for. So we undercover with equality because that's all what we can handle. Could it be that way?
Yeah, and I think it probably also applies to other things, like also like me as a white person, right? There's so much like kind of blind spots that we have, like as white people, like like, yeah, can I just pretend like with others, like, oh, if someone is like BIPOC, or, you know, oh, like we're just equal, let's just treat each other equally and everything's okay.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously in a social situation, yeah, that's what we do. But deep down, that's not what's going on, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So, right, we need to dig deeper and maybe talk about the things, like what are the things that this person goes through on a daily basis that never happens to me, that I don't even see, so I maybe don't even know about it, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think you make a good point.
May I ask one last thing? You said that many guys get afraid with strong women. Can you explain what you think about when you say strong woman?
Opinionated? No, you know, I don't know, because you know, maybe I'm just bad at dating and stuff like that. But sometimes I just feel like I've definitely had guys try to mansplain songs to me and stuff before music, and I'm like,
Your own songs or wrong?
oh God, no, that would be funny. That would be funny. But other stuff, and you're just like, you think I don't know about music? I don't know. I mean, I am the first to admit I don't know everything, and there's a lot I don't know. So sometimes I'm interested, you know, but when I'm telling someone about something and they're telling me it's not what I'm saying, like, and I'll be like, oh my God, but what, you know, and, or, you know, whatever, it's usually younger guys, but like, but you know, that kind of thing. Or like, I see a lot of like, I don't know, I'm trying to think, I guess I'm not good, I'm on you fucking YouTube saying this, but, I think I really just feel that. I see a lot of the guys around me in my scene always dating younger women. Okay, no big deal. I guess I date younger men, but that's rare. But all the men are going out with women who are at least 10 years younger, and someone who I feel like subconsciously it's someone they think they can shape and mold a little bit. Not totally, but a little bit. And they know they can't shape or mold me. And I sometimes I'm just not even impressed with the stuff that they're telling me. I mean, I'm not going to be rude or anything. I think I'm quite open. But I'm not just like, oh, that's so cool, you know. And I'm not even saying young women are doing that, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like that's what a lot of guys are looking for. And I've seen it in my own, I can't say, my own circles. Sometimes, you know.
I agree with that. I think that I think that for me, like being strong women is like having your own opinion and expressing that. And it happens the same to me that when you say to a man that you're dating, like, I don't agree with that, they are like, what? No. Or, for example, they try, as you said, like to shape your opinion on something, even on the subject that you're supposed to know better. So, yeah.
Or if you're in a band that's more, if you're more known than them, or your band is more successful, definitely. Definitely I've noticed the guys I've dated, if they're in bands, they don't like that. No. And bandmates don't like it either. So, just saying.
We have a question from Shali Suniga. In your opinion, what is the goal of feminism nowadays, regardless of weight, academic, official lingo, more in terms of your own experience and beliefs? What do you think is the problem that remains?
Very hard questions. Wait, what? What am I supposed to say? Wait, what?
What is the goal of feminism in your own experience and beliefs today?
Okay, well, I'll try. I mean, I think, like I said, as long as sexism exists, so must feminism. I do believe that it should be a living, moving, breathing thing that's updated, right? And speaks to the lives of women now, and not just certain women, but, you know, all women. And I think that more and more intersectionality is obviously really important and needs to be focused on more, because we have to realize that all the isms interconnect, right? And so anything like classism, racism, all this stuff it's all connected, and it's all like a woman's experience within any of this other stuff, that intersection is going to be even harder, right? And all these other ways. And then I think we have to think about it sometimes when people are talking about sexism, they might be doing it in a kind of racist way or classist way or something, or homophobic way or whatever. And sometimes when we're talking about racism, someone might be doing it in a sexist way or a heterosexist way or something, you know. So that's why it's really important for everyone to really try to see how everything's connected, I guess. It's kind of vague answer, but so I don't know, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to say equality, but you know, obviously that'd be nice. But I think just, you know, the idea that no one's free till everyone's free, right? And I think this capitalist system is really also kind of the root of all evil. And under capitalism, I don't think there will ever be equality. I would like to get rid of that. I would like to even just have like healthcare in the United States, right? Like, why can't we even have that as a human right? But I think if we could have everyone's basic human rights and needs met, and people to feel valued, and for everyone to feel valued and respected and productive and whatever, that would be great. And that should be a goal of feminism.
Thank you. I have a question from Ángeles Araña. I agree that equality is not the problem. There are many different problems, and many of them are local. For example, in Mexico, one of our main problems is feminicide. Do you have anything to say about that?
Oh, you know, I have heard that a lot before coming here, but also a lot of the women I've met since I've been here have been talking about that, like femicide in Mexico, in the country. And I mean, I don't know enough about it to speak about it, but obviously it is a big problem and a problem worldwide as well. I don't know. I think that obviously that should be a big goal of feminism is, like, stop killing us, right? Stop killing women. And like, how do we value women more? And I think about things like domestic violence. I mean, I'm not saying I know exactly the reasons of why women are being killed, but I know domestic violence is a big one. And I think we need to realize that domestic violence is everyone's problem. I know in the United States, often police won't get involved or they won't arrest the guy or whatever, you know, and a lot of times, like, abusers know where to hit someone in a way where it doesn't show and stuff. And there's a lot of secrecy and shame and hiding of that. And I just want to remind people that men who have beat and kill or whatever their partners go on to a lot of the mass shootings that we hear about in the US. You find out that the guy killed his girlfriend right before he went out and shot up the school or whatever, or beat his girlfriend or killed his mom, even, just stuff like that, you know. So I feel like that domestic violence is so often directly tied in intricately to the lives of the men who go out and kill publicly as well. Like, kill, you know, it's a public issue. We only seem to pay attention to murders between strangers, but all of this is related. Yeah. So the same people who go out and just, shoot up a movie theater often have been abusing in their homes for a long time. So I'm guessing that that's part of the issue here, and maybe the undervaluing of women in culture, in society in general, and maybe a lack of safety, corruption. I don't know. It's all. Also, I mean, I felt like in the 90s, we had also a lot of, at least in the US, we had a lot of glamorization of dead women, right? Yeah. Right, like Twin Peaks, the whole thing surrounded this like beautiful dead girl, you know? And especially in the 90s, every movie, every book, everything was that, every comic book, it was all like the sexy dead girl. And you're just like, oh my God, like so over it, you know? But I think that also, I mean, I don't want to say it's causing people to do bad things, but and maybe it's coming from this already people thinking that way, but I think it all perpetuates the problem.
Any more questions? Yes.
Sorry for asking so many.
No, it's good.
How liberating was it to be in Olympia that at the time was kind of like being in the middle of nowhere, so isolated from the rest of the scenes that were happening at the late 80s and early 90s?
Yeah, I think it was a good town to grow up in. Like I said, things were accessible and it wasn't a big city, so it wasn't overwhelming. And I think it was cheaper and easier for people to start things like clubs and venues and stuff. But it also meant there wasn't really enough of a crowd to keep things going. And it was very liberal, and like I said, a lot of women run businesses and things like that. I think what we have to realize is that scenes and culture, everything was a lot more local and regional back then. So, and I didn't drive, I didn't have a car, so we could only get to Seattle if one friend agreed to drive maybe once a month or less. So you had to make do with what you had there. And I kind of like that like you're kind of left to your own devices and resources. And how do you create something out of nothing even? Like, how do you create a scene out where there's a lot of rain, a lot of coffee? So we're drinking coffee in the rain, planning things, It sounds awful, right? So I think, a lot of that is just kind of creating something out of nothing. But maybe you need that time and space to think and talk and be able to create something, And I think that helped. Because I think if I'd grown up somewhere like New York City, I would have felt too little, too overwhelmed, too like, oh, I could never do that. That's so cool, or that's so expensive or hard. I could never get a show there. Even when I lived there, actually, I DJ all the time and I couldn't even get a DJing either. I definitely felt like a small fish in a big pond. And after a while, I'm like, okay, I'm out. So you could maybe be a bigger fish in a small pond.
Okay, more questions? Yes, please.
It's not a question at all, but you said a while ago that you don't like to looking at your old scenes, the fun scenes you made. But now I don't know if you have visited Museo del Chopo, and there is a fanzinotheque. So maybe you will be interested in visiting that place, and maybe you can get some inspiration for rescue the older fanzines and love them again, maybe.
I like other people's fanzines. I just don't want to see mine ever again.
That's just
it's where El Chopo is, where the market is?
No,
it's the market.
The Tianguis, the market is different from the museum.
Totally different thing. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, also, I belong to a female collective. We are Mujeres Vinileras. We play with vinyl and we collect and select music and all. And because a friend of mine told me, ask her what would she recommend us to still doing this. I'm not sure if it's a right question, but or even I'm not sure if I am doing it right, but that's the thing she told me to ask you.
Oh, well, I don't know what I could recommend, but I would like to say that one of the reasons I came to Mexico City was because Alice Bagg and her husband moved here from LA, and they've been doing a YouTube channel, which is really cool. You should check it out. And they're just kind of trying to highlight a lot of amazing things that are happening here in their kind of new adopted city, right? And a lot of stuff that's maybe alternative to an underground. And I have just been loving watching through their eyes what they are engaging with in Mexico City. And I have been so interested in all the women's punk kind of collectives that are going on, much more than I see back home. So I really wanted to actually try to interview some people and try to figure out how to do maybe some podcast episodes on this collective activities of feminist punks here in Mexico City. I think I'll have to come back because I'm barely scraping the tip of the iceberg or whatever. But like I just, heard about yours, and I've heard about this other one as Ojos de Aguas, and now Grrrl, and tons of other stuff I keep hearing about. And I'm like, oh my God, well, now I need to interview someone from that. Oh, well, now I need to hear about this and that. And I'm like, wow. So I think that feminist punk is really happening here in a way that I'm not really seeing, or maybe I just don't know about it as much back in the States, or at least in LA. But what do I know? So I don't know, so I don't really have any recommendation, but I think that maybe let me interview you guys. That's the recommendation.
Actually, on Friday, you're playing with Mujeres Vinileras in Cuernavaca.
Yes.
Oh yeah? Is it your band?
It's
Yes.
not a band, it's a collective.
Oh, it's your project?
Yes, yes.
Yes, we are going to play some vinyl.
Oh, you're the collective.
After your show, but we are going to play some vinyl.
Okay, I'll bring my interview kit. My recorder.
Are you playing in Cuernavaca?
Yeah. On Friday.
Oh yeah.
At the beat?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Should we announce that? One last event. We're playing in Cuernavaca on Friday, May 20th. Yeah.
Estamos hablando de cosas sobre el español nosotros.
Yeah, we should use this to promote the show. So I'm also playing music while I'm here, but my main goal was to try to seek out some of this punk feminist collective activities and interview some people as well. But I mostly seem to be focusing on the music because I have to learn songs. But
Is there a reason why just punk and not other music genre?
well, because you gotta narrow it
Okay.
somehow, right? It's serious. Sometimes it's just random, but you gotta narrow it somehow. Otherwise, it would be never ending, right? So that's why.
Well, thank you so much. Do you have any last words you want to share?
Thank you so much for having me, and also for everyone welcoming me to Mexico City. And it is to my embarrassment that I don't speak Spanish, but I think I need to start taking lessons and learn. So hopefully maybe next time I come, I'll be a little bit better. So, but thank you for also just bearing with me and with English. So.
Sí, la verdad, muchísimas gracias a todos ustedes por habernos acompañado el día de hoy, especialmente la gente que vino, especialmente la gente que vino y la gente que nos siguió por redes. Va a quedar grabado, entonces si ustedes también les gustó, pues reenvíenlo y háganlo circular el vínculo para que más gente lo escuche. Muchísimas gracias.